everyone, welcome to the next episode of Bones and Stones. Today we have Jeremy Hollmann with us, who's a rock art specialist. Jeremy and I go back a few years. When I was in second year, we met for the first time when we were doing work for your PhD, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was
that's right.
Still driving Yellow Mellow, the Nissan Champ, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, it was one of my early field trips with Jeremy, and we had a lot of fun in near Ottersdale recording rock art. So Jeremy, thanks very much for coming on the show to come to chat with us. We're always very appreciative of the people who join us. And maybe just to kick things off, if you could just tell us a bit about the work that you do and your own background, where you come from and what you get up to.
Okay, great. I fell into archaeology. I did a kind of a social science degree, sociology, psychology. University at that time, I was at UCT in the 80s. So it was a very fraught time socially and politically. And I was interested in things to do with contemporary society. So I did things like sociology and psychology and trying to understand how we're in the situation that we were. But it was very soon afterwards that I realized that I had a very strong interest in what, put it simply, what South Africa was like before 1652. And then I discovered that there were these rock paintings. And, firstly from books, the classic old books, Harold Parger's work, Townley Johnson, all those people. And I was just blown away by the fact that there was such sophisticated art going on in what we call the wilderness, but which was actually home range of people. So that just really, and it still blows my mind that in these landscapes there are these hidden away places that have got these gems. Beautiful things, and they're also sort of gems of information. Yeah. So I was a hobbyist and an amateur, and I still, the word amateur means someone who loves the work. So I'm still an amateur because I still get excited about going to see a new rock art site, and so it was a hobby. Yeah. And then I eventually made contact with David Lewis Williams through attending summer school lectures, and I was working freelance. So whenever I had a break, I would go off and I would go look for paintings, and I'd photograph the sites and so on. And I'd go back, and then once I got to know David, then I would show him the sites and so on. And he kind of encouraged me to go into it and to actually publish. And so that's where I did my first publication back in 1993. Okay. And but then rock art was still, there were no jobs. I mean, it's a bit better now in archaeology, but I mean, we all know that still jobs are incredibly scarce. Yeah. And then, so after 94, the big changes in 94, San rock art became much more, there was much more impact, there was a lot more interest in it, and more funding became available. And so I'll never forget in 1998, I was living in Pretoria working as a horticulturalist, and kind of given up on rock art as a way of being able to devote my time to it. Yeah. And then he said, come down to Wits for lunch. So we went to the Wits Club for lunch. And over coffee, David offered me a job, or he said I should apply for this job as research officer, which I did, and I got the job. And ever since then, I've kind of been involved pretty much full time in rock art. Yeah. And I worked at Wits for 7 years, and then went on to work at the KZN Museum in Pietermaritzburg. And then in 2012, I went freelance. And I'm still managing to do rock art research. I'm still managing to get funding. And I make what money I make. I make from contracts and now increasingly tourism.
Okay.
So that's kind of that's my background.
Yeah, and yeah, that's thanks, Jeremy. That's really interesting, and I know, like, I mean, we've spent actually quite a bit of time in the field, since the Ottosdal expedition in Lesotho and so on. And
yes.
one of the things that's always interested me is the way you tackle interpreting this rock art through your lens of your camera, and that's sort of what we wanted to chat about today as well. Is I mean, obviously for most people who've been to rock art sites, they've noticed that a lot of them are quite deteriorated, or they've just started to fade or disappear. But through the techniques that you use, you're able to bring out an incredible amount of imagery that is often very difficult to see with the naked eye. Can you just chat a little bit about your methods and approach to that? I think that could be of interest to a lot of people.
Yes, this was an amazing thing that happened around about 2009. The software started, this image enhancement software started to appear, and people started to apply it to the rock paintings. And my introduction was through a chap called Kevin Krause, who is a professional photographer, and he attended a lecture of ARCSOC in the wilderness there in Southern Cape, and he was struck by how poor the photographs were. And he said, no, I can do a better thing than this. And being a professional, he had professional grade equipment, and he was also very interested in the business of making the paintings more clear. Mm-hmm. So it was through Kevin that my eyes were opened. I'd always known that quality of image is important when recording rock art, because it's a transient thing. It doesn't last forever. Mm. And I was always struck by in our archives, we've got a lot, I'm talking about archives in general, any museum, any university has a collection of rock art, but it's all of very varying quality, the images themselves. It's photographed with whatever the archaeologist or other person had to hand. And what I learned from Kevin is the importance of getting the best possible equipment you can. If you're focused, if you are doing rock art research or documenting rock art, you need the best, because it's archival and the paintings may not be there next time. Mm. So it makes sense. Yeah. So from then on, was my first start. And then Kevin and we worked together on a site that was going to be drowned by the Springgrove Dam here in KZN. And we published, I think, one of the first papers, the first South African treatment of a site where we showed what you could see under a sort of normal exposure, and then what happens when you use algorithms to enhance the red in the paintings. And that's the big technical breakthrough with these algorithms. And nowadays they're nicely packaged in a program that I'm sure you guys and all of us now know about, this program called D-Stretch, which you can get, you can put it on your phone now. Yeah. It's an Android version, and there's an iOS version, which makes it really easy nowadays. You can carry that your device with you up to a site, and you can photograph, because that's the thing, sorry to interrupt myself, that was the amazing thing, was that how even an apparently blank area of rock, when you photograph it and you take it back and you enhance it, my goodness, there's something there. It's not always. Yeah. It's not always. It's quite variable. Sometimes you think you're going to get a great, you're going to see a lot more, and it's disappointing. But then other times, as I say, you photograph nothing, and it comes out beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
also, sometimes you take a picture, you get this image that comes out, and you look back, and suddenly you can see it with your, with the naked eye all of a sudden. When you know what to look for, and it's really quite amazing.
Yes. Yes, that is very true. When you go back and you look on it, you look at it, you say, no, okay, it was there.
Yeah,
it was there, but we couldn't see it clearly, or not clearly enough.
Yeah.
And Kevin did a very so sorry. We worked on this paper, which was about the site, and it really revealed. I mean, we were just seeing 20%, and then with the enhancements, we saw much more.
Amazing.
And we saw some yes, and some of this imagery was really helpful for interpretive. Sorry, my cord's just fallen out, but I'll leave it. It made a difference from point of view of interpretation.
Okay. Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
there was more images there. Yes. So I actually, once I learned about this, I thought my heart fell in a way, because I thought, now all of those sites that I've seen over all the years, I was only seeing 20%.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and kind of thinking, I want to go back to all of them now, because I've missed so much.
Karen, you want to
so it was huge. Yeah, it was a huge eye opener, and so it was kind of going hand in hand with the enhancement, was the thing of just taking a lot more trouble when taking photographs. I'm particularly slow at a site, but I think in general, I started doing things like using a tripod.
Okay.
Because then you know that your picture is going to be sharp. So it kind of starts with those basic kind of things.
Yeah.
And then we started to experiment with using de-stretch, which I was mentioning. The problem with de-stretch is that you get very wild colors sometimes. Yeah. So the image comes out, it's clear, but they're like these screaming purples and yellows and things like that. So what Kevin did, okay, there's a question, Matt.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's fine. I'll ask after.
Okay, so what Kevin did, and what I learned from Kevin, and then what I experimented with myself, was finding ways to present these images to students and in one's articles for research, to try and tone down those things, to make them look more normal. Although, it's still very important, I think, that when you're presenting these things, you've got to show people the original and say, this is what I'm working off.
Yeah, sure.
And this is what, because the digital, they say photographs can't lie, but we know very much that they can lie in this era of fake news and Facebook and so on.
Most pictures of Pharaoh when he looks good, that's a lie.
Yes. Yeah. And the de-stretch thing is also, it's a reconstruction, it's an interpretation, just like a copy of a painting, a tracing of a painting is an interpretation. Yeah. So we have to watch out for this false objectivity. Right.
Well, thanks very much, Jeremy. That's really, really interesting. Two questions for you. Number one, what is it a quality of the paint that these people who were using to make rock art that is so sort of receptive, let's say, to de-stretch and its algorithms for highlighting? You said specifically reds. So I'm wondering if it's maybe like a quality of ochre or other chemicals that were used. And number two, is it possible to use de-stretch to improve Tim and Matt Lauder's face so they look a little more enhanced? Would that be possible? Can you work on an algorithm that might do that as well?
Not the free version.
Yeah, the de-stretch filter for Zoom, during these meetings.
Matt, I think what you need there is de-stretch is not going to help.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
You're going to have to use other software for that. The red is particularly receptive, particularly suitable for picking up, and I'm not quite sure why that is. The technical reason. It's obviously that's the wavelength that's getting reflected back at us, the wavelengths are the red ones. And the paintings are, as you know, they are all essentially ochre, red ochre based. Right. So it's a happy coincidence or it's very fortuitous, because things like black and white don't come out so well with D-stretch.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Now, having said that, and I think Tim, I'm sending some things to Tim, some enhancements. I've used another workaround because D-stretch doesn't always work. Sometimes, because of those screaming colors, sometimes there's not enough contrast or something. So I use another color space called LAB. You know, mostly on Photoshop and with our images, we're using RGB, red, green, and blue. And LAB is just another way of conveying color. And what it does is that it enables you to keep your contrast in a separate channel. And so what you can do, and then you've got your reds in the A channel, and in the B, you've got yellows and things. So what you can do is you can take the A channel of an image that's got red in it, and you can screw up the settings, and it gives you the most wonderful grayscale image. And sometimes it's really, really startling. It's even more wow than D-stretch. So I've sent a couple of examples, things that really look like you could never make sense of them, and then they come out. And of course, coming back to this thing now, I mean, D-stretch is now common currency. I think everybody knows about it now, and it's really made a huge difference to rock art recording. So I was kind of just there at the beginning, thanks to Kevin. But now, you know, it's great because now it's freely available. Anybody with a device goes to a site can do this. Yeah. And it's now becoming really standard. You know, the work that I'm looking at, you know, if looking at people's theses and dissertations and things like that, you see how it's being used. Yeah.
So lots. I see you've got a question. Should we do one more question and then wrap it up?
Yeah. If that's okay, Jeremy. Thanks very much. This has been incredibly interesting. But just maybe to get back to the nitty-gritty, taking the photos, because like you said, you know, recording rock art is very much an archival thing. So although we have this very important software that we can use like D-stretch, which it seems like it has essentially revolutionized the study of rock art because we're able to pull these images out of the rock face, which is incredible. It still comes back to taking good photos. So maybe just, I suppose it's less of a question, but more of an observation. But for those students and researchers who are studying rock art, I suppose what is really important, like you say, is using correct photographic techniques, having a tripod, you know, using the correct lens, getting yourself in the right place, getting your lighting correct, getting your aperture correct as well for the sharpest images. So it's just essentially, you know, one can use software to digitally enhance your images afterwards, but nothing beats a good quality sharp photo in the field.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You know, it reminds me of that saying that came up with computers: garbage in, garbage out. You know, your photo is blurred. D-stretch ain't going to help you. You know, you those things. Yeah, I mean, the most important things are the stability, the lighting, the focus. And I mean, those are all things that people can do. You just need to practice with it and take the trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy. I think we will have to, unfortunately, call it a day. We always find we get to the end of these chats and think, well, we just want to carry on. So we do appreciate you coming on, taking some time and sharing some of your knowledge and skills with everyone. And hopefully we can chat soon, maybe talk about some more rock art.
Yes, great. Thank you. Nice chatting to you guys.
Cheers.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thank you very much.
Okay.